Sometimes the greatest truths in our lives are not spoken out loud. They are hidden in silence, tucked away in corners we forget to look at, waiting to be discovered long after we think it's too late. Today, I want to share with you a story, not of wealth, not of fame, but of something far deeper. A story about a letter, a simple piece of paper that revealed a hidden love and changed the way one man saw his life forever. It begins in a quiet American town, the kind of place where everyone knows each other's names. The streets are lined with oak trees, and the seasons move gently, reminding everyone that time is always passing. In this town lived a man named Daniel. He was 52 years old, a mechanic by trade. The kind of man who had grease on his hands, but also a gentleness in his eyes. To most people, Daniel was just another ordinary man. He fixed cars, paid his bills, lived quietly, and never asked for much. But like every life, his story carried more than what the surface showed. Daniel had grown up in a strict household. His father was tough, not the kind of man who said, "I love you," or gave warm hugs. He taught discipline through silence, and Daniel, as a boy, grew up feeling that love was something distant, something you had to earn, something you might never fully receive. His mother was softer, kinder, but she spent most of her energy keeping peace in the house. So Daniel learned early how to bury his feelings, how to keep going without asking for affection. He thought this was normal, the way everyone lived. By the time Daniel was a teenager, his heart had already grown used to silence. He worked hard, studied enough to graduate, and took up a job at the local garage. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. Yet deep inside, Daniel carried a question he never asked out loud. Did my father ever truly love me? That question lingered like a shadow. He never confronted it, never searched for the answer, because some questions felt too dangerous to ask. Years passed. Daniel married young, had a son of his own, and promised himself he would be a different kind of father. He worked long hours to provide, and even though he wasn't perfect, he made sure his son knew he was loved. Still, whenever Daniel looked back on his own childhood, he felt a dull ache, a wound that never fully healed. He rarely spoke of his father, who had passed away quietly a decade ago, leaving behind a small box of belongings that Daniel never had the heart to open. And then, one rainy afternoon, that box resurfaced. Daniel was cleaning out the attic. His wife had been urging him to sort through old things, and in the middle of dusty photo albums and forgotten tools, he found it. A worn-out wooden box with his father's initials carved faintly on the lid. For a moment, Daniel froze. His hands trembled slightly as he picked it up. It felt heavier than it should have, not in weight, but in meaning. He carried it downstairs, set it on the kitchen table, and just stared. The rain tapped gently against the windows, as if urging him on. Finally, he opened it. Inside were a few pocket watches, some yellowed photographs, and then, at the bottom, an envelope. It was sealed, his name written in his father's unmistakable handwriting. Daniel's breath caught. He didn't know what to do. For years, he had carried the belief that his father was a man incapable of tenderness. To see his own name on an envelope left him shaken. He hesitated. What if it contained nothing? What if it confirmed the coldness he always felt? Or worse, what if it revealed something he wasn't ready to face? But after a long silence, Daniel tore it open. The letter inside was short. His father's handwriting was firm, almost rigid, but the words were unlike anything Daniel had ever heard from him in life. Daniel, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer there to say these things in person. I know I was never good at expressing myself. My silence was not because I didn't care. It was because I didn't know how. I grew up in a world where men were taught not to speak of love, and I carried that burden into my own home. But I want you to know, I was proud of you. I saw the way you worked hard, the way you carried yourself, the way you became a man. I loved you, even if I never found the courage to say it. Forgive me for my silence. Forgive me for being the kind of father who hid his love. You were always more than enough. Dad. The words blurred as Daniel's eyes filled with tears. He pressed the letter to his chest and wept in a way he hadn't had since he was a boy. In that moment, decades of unanswered questions began to dissolve. The silence he had mistaken for indifference had been something else all along, a love his father did not know how to show. That night, Daniel sat in his small living room, the letter resting beside him. He thought of the years he had spent in quiet resentment, the way he had carried an invisible weight without realizing it. And now here it was, a truth hidden all those years waiting to be found. His father had loved him. His father had been proud. Those words were late, yes, but they were real. And sometimes late is still enough to heal. The turning point came quietly, not with grand gestures, but with a simple realization. Love doesn't always look the way we expect it to. Some people express it with words, some with actions, and some, like Daniel's father, struggle to show it at all. But the absence of expression does not always mean the absence of love. From that day forward, Daniel carried the letter with him, not in his pocket, but in his heart. It changed the way he saw his past, but more importantly, it changed the way he lived his present. He became more intentional with his words, making sure his wife and son never doubted his love. He understood now that silence can wound, and so he chose presence, kindness, and expression. He realized that it is never too late to love, but it is always better to say it while you still can. Years later, when Daniel's own son was grown and preparing to leave home, Daniel handed him a small notebook. Inside, he had written letters for his son, words of encouragement, words of pride, words of love. He didn't want his son to ever wonder, to ever carry the question Daniel had carried for so long. He wanted love to be clear, undeniable, spoken, and that is the lesson of Daniel's story. That sometimes the love we doubt has been there all along, hidden behind walls of silence. That sometimes what seems absent is only unexpressed. And most of all, that it is never too late to speak, to write, to show the people we love what they mean to us. The letter that revealed a hidden love didn't just answer Daniel's question. It gave him a new purpose. It reminded him, and reminds us now, that life is fragile. Time is fleeting, and the words we leave unspoken today might be the ones that haunt someone tomorrow. So if you are listening to this, I ask you, who in your life needs to hear that you love them? Who needs to know that you are proud of them? Do not wait. Do not assume they know. Write the letter, make the call, speak the words, because love, unspoken, can feel like absence, but love expressed can heal wounds that silence cannot. In the end, Daniel's father gave him a gift, a truth that came late, but still came, and Daniel turned that truth into a legacy of love for his own family. You can do the same. You can choose today to make sure your love is never hidden, never left behind in an unopened envelope, but shared freely while there is still time. Because one day, the people you love will not be here. One day, neither will you. But the words you choose to speak now, the love you choose to express now, those are the things that will outlast you.